During his first term, President Trump proved that the president, on his own authority, can secure our borders. President Biden proved that a president who's determined to make a mockery of our immigration laws can willfully open our borders to the most violent criminals, terrorists, gangs, and cartels on this planet, and then use the Democrat sanctuary laws to protect them. This national nightmare ended at noon on Monday. But what of future presidents? This bill assures that what happened to Laken Riley cannot happen again should another Joe Biden disgrace the presidency.
Today, they want to change the subject from the indelible and shocking public safety disaster of the president releasing hundreds of convicted felons, specifically violent cop-beating felons caught on tape in the act, whom he had incited on January 6, 2021, back into the population with no plan for protecting the American people or the public safety. So what do they want to talk about today in their wisdom? Public safety and immigration. Well, great, let's do it. This bill does nothing to address the major problems we face in the immigration system or to secure the American border. Nor does it do anything to address the major problems we face in public safety, such as the central and overriding problem of out-of-control gun violence, which takes tens of thousands of American citizens' lives every year and is the leading cause of death among American citizen children up to the age of 18.
Mr. Speaker, S5 bears the name of Laken Riley, murdered by one of the 8 million illegal aliens that Joe Biden and his Democratic supporters deliberately allowed into our country over these last 4 years. In Laken's case, the murderer was paroled into this country through a shocking abuse of that power. He was repeatedly arrested for theft and other crimes in sanctuary jurisdictions, and each time released back onto our streets. Just months before he murdered Laken, he was arrested for theft. But ICE couldn't take him into custody because of the Biden-Harris administration's policies that shielded such monsters from arrest and deportation. This measure, first introduced by Representative Mike Collins, would require ICE detention for illegal aliens who were charged with, arrested for, or convicted of any burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting offense. Now, the Democrats have argued that, well, mere accusation of committing a crime should not be grounds for detention, and besides, shoplifting's no big deal. Well, they ignore the fact that every illegal alien is currently required to be detained by current law throughout the pendency of their asylum claims. The Democrats have thumbed their noses at this law for the past 4 years. Their excuse is that they are prioritizing detaining more dangerous offenders. Well, this bill does exactly that, yet they still oppose it. A handful of Democrats in both the House and the Senate have now come over to support this law, and we welcome them. We wish them well in convincing the majority of their party that they need to change course, if not for the good of our country, then at least for the good of themselves. We'll take their support any way we can get it. I have every confidence that President Trump will end this scourge upon our nation during the next 4 years. This law, and the others that will follow it, will assure that no future president will be able to unleash upon our country what Joe Biden and his Democratic supporters did. I urge my colleagues to support it, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise in opposition to S5. All these fine speeches, all these fancy parties with billionaires and congressmen in tuxedos, all these executive orders for big oil and the tech broligarchs, all these complete and unconditional pardons for Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and violent extremists who chanted, "Hang Mike Pence," and smashed, swarmed, and wounded our police officers in this building with steel poles, baseball bats, American flags, Confederate battle flags, and bear mace. All this sound and fury on day one and week one, but nothing to bring down grocery prices, nothing to bring down the cost of rent as they promised, nothing to improve our health care system or build on our success in the last Congress in reducing prescription drug prices, nothing to get health insurance coverage for millions of people who don't have it, nothing to bring down the cost of housing or build new housing, nothing to combat the nightmare of climate change other than the full-scale retreat of withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord, nothing to address the real problems faced by the American people. Mr. Speaker, it may surprise a lot of Americans, but we actually know how to solve these problems, how to make substantial progress on both immigration and public safety. The roadblock is that the majority completely lacks the political will to do it. Why? Well, the Republicans are divided between two extreme positions. The big business tech oligarchs who bankroll their party, who love cheap foreign labor under the current regime, and the inflamed nativist MAGA element who want to shut down all immigration, including legal immigration, and believe in right-wing conspiracy theories like the racist Great Replacement theory. Look, Congress could pass bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform this week. Senate Republicans and Democrats reached a powerful and painstaking compromise with President Biden last year to fortify our border with more border agents and more enforcement, more detection technology, more asylum judges, and more funding. But President Trump told House Republicans to tank this popular bipartisan agreement, to sink it. He didn't want a bipartisan border solution to improve things in the real world. He wanted a permanent border crisis to run against on TV. Not doing anything means that Trump doesn't offend his big business supporters who want cheap foreign labor under the current regime, but it allows him to pander indefinitely to his MAGA base with nativist rhetoric and tiny little messaging bills that move a few words around but don't fundamentally change anything. We should add to the tough border measures already negotiated last Congress a meaningful pathway to citizenship proposed for Dreamers, TPS holders, and other law-abiding, productive immigrants. If we move from demagoguery to deliberation, we can flesh this out and we can make immigration work for America, a nation built on immigrants. We have huge job shortages in agriculture, in manufacturing, in retail, in seafood, in nursing and hospitals, and many other areas. We should not be plunging America into chaos to deport millions of people when we already need millions of new people to work here. If the GOP plan of deporting 12 million people were really to happen, it would plunge us into another Trump economic crisis like the last one under COVID-19, but maybe even cause a depression this time. The vast majority of Americans know what common sense dictates. We must make it a lot harder for people to get into our country illegally, but we must make it a lot easier for people to get into our country lawfully. Today, only 2% of people seeking admission lawfully are admitted, and Donald Trump and his first administration crippled legal immigration into the country. He banned many legal immigrants unable to prove that they have high incomes. He banned immigrants from 13 specific countries. He banned most visa applicants and most skilled temporary workers, deeming them an economic threat. We must reform our system consistent with our values as a nation. Similarly, when it comes to public safety, we could arrive at a common sense, bipartisan agenda right now to make our communities a lot safer if we were serious about it. Let's take the central problem of gun violence, for example, which now takes more than 48,000 American lives a year and is the leading cause of death for children and young people in America up to the age of 18. Gun violence costs America an astonishing $557 billion a year, Mr. Speaker, more than $500 billion a year. because of gun violence. Mass shootings with an AR-15 or other assault weapons have become a terrifying feature of gun violence in America, although they account for just over 1% of the tens of thousands of lives we lose generally to gun violence, where old-fashioned handgun homicides and suicides and accidents continue to cause the vast majority of death. Here are some policies that the vast majority of Americans support that we could pass this week if they would allow us to do it, Mr. Speaker. Congress could close the loopholes in the Brady legislation, like the internet loophole and the private gun show loophole. We could pass universal violent criminal background checks on all gun purchases, something supported by upwards of 90% of the American people. Vast majorities of people of both political parties, independents, conservatives, liberals, gun owners, non-gun owners, almost everybody supports it. We could pass a military-style assault weapons ban, which more than 60% of Americans support. We could crack down on the proliferating danger of ghost guns, and we could expand red flag laws nationwide. Alas, our colleagues refuse to do any of it because their well-advertised compassion for the American victims of violent crimes committed by undocumented aliens, which they base their entire argument on and which we all share, apparently does not extend to the far larger class of American victims of violent gun crimes committed by other American citizens, even though we have not just 48,000 Americans killed every year, but 115,000 American citizens wounded and maimed trying to survive this gun violence debacle handed to us by the NRA and their followers in Congress. They argue that the Second Amendment prevents all these common sense gun safety measures, even though the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld them, including an assault weapon ban, criminal background checks on gun buyers, and so on. When a white supremacist gunman bearing an AR-15 assassinates dozens of American citizens' school children in Connecticut or Florida, dozens of citizen and non-citizen Walmart shoppers in El Paso, Texas, or supermarket shoppers in Buffalo, or worshipers at the Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, or worshipers at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, our colleagues extend only thoughts and prayers. They say nothing can be done, alas. There's just evil in the world, and the Second Amendment keeps them from acting. We just have to accept this as the inescapable human price and sacrifice paid for the Second Amendment, even though that's not what the Supreme Court says. Well, at least today shows they think something can be done to stop violent crime in America. Will they take their newfound sense of moral outrage and compassion and apply it not just in one case, but to the tens of thousands of victims of gun violence in America? America is waiting for an answer. What is the majority proposing today? Well, S5 is a bill to subject to mandatory detention not just undocumented people who've been convicted of theft, shoplifting, and other criminal offenses, which has been the law supported unanimously by both parties since 1996, but people who've been simply charged with such offenses or arrested for such offenses, even if the charges are dropped or even if they're never filed in the first place. It's an odd way to fix the border because it has nothing to do with the border, and it's an extremely attenuated and constitutionally dubious way to promote public safety. The vast majority of serious crimes committed in America are committed by American citizens, not aliens, and the vast majority of aliens don't commit crimes at all. But this bill doesn't even focus on the culpable class of undocumented immigrants who commit crimes. That the law already does. It focuses on those who are arrested, even if they're never charged, or those who are charged with crimes, even if they're never convicted, or even if the charges are dropped. A young person in Dhaka who's with a group of friends, when one of them is arrested for shoplifting and then all the kids get charged, will be subject to mandatory detention and deportation, even if the child was not shoplifting and the charges are dropped. The bill is likely to pass, no doubt, because of the profound sympathy we all share for the parents and family of Laken Riley, who have suffered an unthinkable, totally shocking, and profoundly unnecessary trauma. This should not be a partisan issue, and it should not be demagogued for partisan purposes. But when we get serious about comprehensive threats to public safety in our immigration system, we will have to address the mass crises staring us in the face, like the gun violence epidemic, which takes the lives of tens of thousands of American citizens every year at the hands overwhelmingly of U.S. citizen gunmen. We reserve, Mr. Speaker.